Councilmember Sullivan. We'll move on and then come back. Vice Mayor, Vice Chair Beatty. Sure. Mayor, Chair Roulette. Sure. Councilmember Sullivan.
I don't like doing it.
Yeah.
Might or we might not have it. And please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. City Manager, any anything with the agenda tonight that we will be changing? Thank you.
Yes, Mayor. This evening, just one note is already on the agenda is item 8D has been continued to a further meeting undetermined. Also, item 5B was a presentation relating to the Senior Home Improvement Program. We're going to delay that presentation because we're going to delay that program out of an abundance of caution. If you recall, that's our Senior Housing Improvement Program where we bring the trades in to assist seniors in small improvements that can help them stay in their homes. And given the current health environment, we didn't want to risk having a bunch of people into seniors' homes. So we just need to remove that item.
And you said
item 5B.
5B and 9D,
Sorry, 8D.
as in boy?
8D has already been continued to a date uncertain on the agenda.
Okay.
Just wanted to make a notice for the public.
Okay. I'll entertain motion.
With changes, move approval.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll say unanimous. Approval of the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll call it unanimous. Item 5A, presentations, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, we have Fred and Maya from our Community Development Department who have been working on the 2020 Census Project and have a brief presentation on what's happening in the month of March.
Thank you very much. So the Planning Division has been working on the 2020 census effort. We wanted to bring you a brief presentation for the council and the public just to update you on what the city's efforts have been in coordination with the census effort. So I'm joined at the table here this evening by Maya Amchai, planner with the city's Planning Division. Maya is going to provide us with a brief summary of some of the efforts ongoing.
So to start off is why it's important for everyone to respond to the census. Responses to the census inform where over $675 billion is distributed in the U.S., which translates to around $20,000 per person that is allocated to states, local governments, and nonprofits. And census data informs decisions about needed community services and also determines number of seats in the House of Representatives, as well as legislative districting. And here at the City of Vacaville, we have participated in a number of programs to update the census data. Among those is the local update of census address program. Through that, we updated over 4,000 missing addresses from the census data. So those are residents that wouldn't have received their census mail if we hadn't participated in the program. And we updated the boundary of the city, as well as informing them of new construction that is not yet completed. And we are working on sending some census publicity with the next round of city bills. And Solano County received $145,000 from the state to form a complete count committee. The complete count committee is focused on getting outreach to hard to count communities. And hard to count communities are identified according to things like lack of education in a community, not speaking English, a lot of renters or non-traditional housing situations. And we don't have any hard-to-count communities in Vacaville, so we were not on the complete count committee. However, the Solano County money is going toward paying for the mailing with the utility bills. And here's a outline of what people can expect from the census. So the census will be mailing out the initial invitations to respond to the census, and everyone should be getting those in the next 2 weeks. And then everyone can respond either by mail or on the phone or online. And Solano County libraries will have stations for people to use computers there. And then reminder letters will be sent, as well as reminder postcards. And beginning in May, everyone who has not yet responded will get a knock on their door from a census enumerator. But the hope is for everyone to respond before then. And some things to know is that census data is protected by federal law. It can't be used against you or shared with anyone. And where you are counted matters. So everyone should count themselves where they live and sleep most of the time. So for children who live between homes, that's where they spend most of the time, or where they are on April 1st, 2020. And this is also pertinent to college students who should be counted at the place they live while they're in school, as well as to other transient people. And for people who are moving soon or moved recently, you count yourself where you will be living on April 1st, 2020. And the Census Bureau has done a lot of publicity and outreach as well. They have PSAs on television and through local news and on local radio. And Bay Area Counts has a text messaging service with information and updates. And there's this website, Solano Census 2020, where people can sign up for the text message service. And that's it. We are hoping for 100% participation in the city of Vacaville. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to item 6, the consent calendar. Anybody from the council?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir, you may.
I'm sorry, I'm sure everyone knows this except me. The 8,000 inmates in the 2 institutions, are they counted? They are counted. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So just 2 really quick things. Is there any effort for counting the homeless population in Vacaville from the city, or is that going to just be through different organizations through the county?
And what's your second question?
I signed up to be one of the people that went around, and I've never received anything back, so I don't know if anybody has actually contacts with that, but I know quite a few people have signed up to be walkers for census and have not heard anything back from
Great.
the census. So
Thank you.
There's I believe people applied for census jobs through their website, and you can log in to their website for an update on the status. And the homeless population is supposed to be counted. There is not any effort from the city to make sure that happens at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the consent calendar. Anybody from the council want to pull anything off the consent? I see none. I'll open it up to the floor. Anybody from the floor would like to pull anything off the consent? Seeing nobody, I'll entertain motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, item 7, business from the floor. This is time to address the council with any issues that are not on the agenda and that are within the council's subject matter jurisdiction.
Hi, I'm Wendy Breckett. I noticed on Facebook that the Main Street Smokehouse closed. So it was a restaurant, barbecue restaurant, had been there for a little while. Young guy, trying to live the dream kind of thing. And I guess because of the PG&E blackouts, he lost $12,000 in food that went bad. And so, he tried to make the most of it and try to recover money, but couldn't. So now he's closing. He says he wants to try to get back. So I'm just raising this to you because maybe you know of resources to connect him to. It's just the Main Street Smokehouse. And I don't know if the city does any kind of grants and loans or maybe Chamber of Commerce, anything to, if there's some, and what's going to happen the next time there's blackouts, are more businesses going to lose money over it? Is there a way to get generators to prevent it?
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other public comments, I'm going to close public comments. We'll move to item 8A, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, our first public hearing is a resolution of City Council regarding a levy of taxes to qualified electors of Annexation 6 related to CFD District Number 11. Tim Sherry and Kim from Administrative Services to present.
Thank you. One edit on that, it's annexation number 7 into CFD number 11, Southtown. So our item tonight is annexing Cerrito at Vanden Estates, which is also referred to as Parkside internally. So that should sound familiar from the last council meeting where the lighting and landscaping districts were approved. So just a little bit of background, CFD number 11 was formed in 2006 to provide for the full cost of fire and police services within the district. Since formation, there have been 6 annexations into the district with a total of 1,418 units levied as of the fiscal year 1920 tax roll cycle. Cerrito is annexation number 7 and will include approximately 50 single-family residential units at full build-out. Based on fiscal year 1920 rates, the subject development would generate approximately $105,500 per year to the general fund in order to provide police and fire services to the area. So revenue from this development will be collected through county property tax levies at the point building permits are issued. Although fiscal year 1920 rates are given, revenue from these units won't actually be received within this fiscal year due to the timing. So the map here shows where Cerrito is located. It's outlined in red. Cerrito at Vanden Estates is located in the southeast quadrant of the city in between existing development areas as shown in the map. The special tax discussed tonight would only affect this area, not the rest of the residents in Vacaville. And down the road, when this development is built and homes are sold, these homeowners would see the tax on their property tax bill. So the steps to be taken to complete the annexation are the first legislative action, which occurred on January 28th, when a resolution of intention was adopted and a date was set for the public hearing. Since the owner of this parcel has waived their right to the time requirement in order to expedite this annexation, we'll be covering all of the items listed in the second bullet point tonight. So tonight is the public hearing, submitting the annexation of territory and levy of tax to qualified electors, declaring results of the special annexation election, and the first reading of the ordinance levying a special tax within the district. The final legislative action will be the adoption of the ordinance levying the special tax within the district, and that proceeding is scheduled to take place at the March 24th council meeting. And then we'll take any questions.
I see no questions, but before we open it up for a public hearing, if anyone wishes to file a written protest, they must file it with the city clerk now. With that, I'll open up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, just one quick one. Is there a formula or some sort of metric for the amount of dwellings or land area to determine how much is needed for fire and police coverage? So if you take 50 houses or 105 houses or 200 houses, is there some sort of metric for that?
There's a rate and method of apportionment that was established at the time the CFD was formed, and there's an estimate in that rate and method of apportionment that details out the anticipated level of staffing needed to cover additional territories and units. And we can send that over in a subsequent.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Harris?
So my question is, I think that study was done back in 2004. It was quite a while ago, and I'm wondering if it's time to do an update. And so I'd like to request an update be done.
Okay, now I will open it up to public comments.
So if I'm doing my math right, always a questionable thing, 50 houses for $105,000 per year, it's gonna be about $2,000 per year. Not for any other taxes, just for this district. And I guess I'm just wondering, what are the property taxes going to be total for these new houses? And then what are the property taxes for, say, somebody on Azalea? If somebody were to buy a house on Azalea today, they wouldn't be subject to these taxes. I mean, it's just one of those things that the people that buy these new houses get hit very, very hard with these Melrose taxes. And so it is something that I really wish you guys would take a look at, making more uniform tax decisions that don't just hit 50 houses.
Hi, Alicia Minion. I actually wasn't going to speak on the matter, and you've seen me many times on this matter. But with regard to the comment from the last speaker, this tax is actually a tax. It's in perpetuity. It is increased every year based on a CPI that is tied to the San Francisco Hayward San Jose Urban Worker Index. So there really is no correlation between that CPI index and it's how the money is spent. And so, and someone might argue, well, it was disclosed, but it wasn't really well disclosed. And I've talked to staff one-on-one, and I think that what we talked about, they're working with the builders to make sure there's adequate disclosure. But back to your comment, Diana, I think you made an excellent comment. And, you know, this was many years ago that there was an assessment. What's weird is when you look over time, this is CFD 11, so there's like 8, 9, 10, and they're all just about a year apart. And for some reason, CFD number 12, which happened after 11, that actually went down. So again, the assessment, if there is a new one done, I really encourage it, and I would like to have some input on it, because the assessment really, the cost should represent the marginal cost per additional unit. So what is the cost of providing the service for every additional unit built? And that's the assessment that we really need. And it is, I think that the tax, when you compare this particular tax on the new home developments and compare it to the bulk of the city, you know, there is a large disparity. And I know one day, and I'll keep saying this, I hope we do have some equitable way of raising funds to provide the fire and police services that we need at the levels that we need. Thank you.
Wendy Brecken again. My comment is, or it's actually a question, how do you know for sure that the people who buy those houses in CFD 11 will be paying only for services, fire services for their community? Won't the fire trucks also be going to other areas? And how much of the time, you know, what's the proportionate amount that they'll be going outside the area? Should they be solely responsible for all those new taxes for that fire station?
Do you want us to comment on that part of it? Sure. So our consultant brought this up as well when they did the presentation. And so the CFDs are different than the assessment districts, these lighting and landscaping districts. So there is no CFD police officer. You know, there is no CFD firefighter, paramedic that's only going to serve that area. And you know, that is within the CFD scope. When the study was done, the study was coming up with the cost to basically, we had to build a fire station to maintain the standards of coverage at that time, and I have the information right here on that. You can pull up. So at that time, the standards of response cover study for the city's fire department was to respond to an emergency within city limits in 6 minutes, 85% of the time. And so based off of that, we had to build a fire station out there. And that is why it's part of the CFD cost for that area.
Okay. Any other public comments? I'm going to close public comments. We're going to do council comments before we go any farther, but the issue with the CFD really came about when we were trying to make sure that we continued our services, but we wanted to expand the city of Vacaville. Obviously, you can't go back and put CFDs on people unless you go out to a citywide. And eventually, we've been talking about it since Elena and Mitch both up here. We've been talking about wanting to go and do that citywide. That would bring the taxes for some of the folks that have the newer CFD taxes, that would bring that down. And then it would bring people like me. I would love to pay for the tax. I get the service. I wouldn't mind doing it. I live in a home that doesn't have the CFD. I would have no problem doing that. But we have to bring it to a citywide vote and have the city say, yes, we want everyone to pay in equally. And I think that would be fair. And I think that would work when it comes to that. But we've done both studies trying to figure out when that tipping point is. You have to have, 50% of the people that want to tax themselves, and then the other people that are already being taxed that would vote for that. So there's going to be a delicate balance. You can run it now, and I don't know if it would win. But eventually, I would like to see it. I wouldn't mind paying the tax because I get a great service here in Vacaville. But until then, this is what we're doing. So, it's some way of getting some money back so we can continue our great service. Councilwoman Harris.
I think the other issue is that, we have a large senior population who's on fixed incomes, and they did not have time to plan and, budget for a tax increase. And I think it would be a very big hardship for them. So that's another challenge to having a citywide assessment.
I see no other comments from the council. So, and we didn't get any written opposition. So we will now consider an adoption for the resolution calling for the property owner vote on a proposed annexation and levy of special taxes in the annexed area. Do I hear a motion?
My simple motion, adopt subject resolution, annex levy territory and levy of special taxes, qualified electors.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. In anticipation of the election, the ballots have been completed by the property owners in the annexation territory and submitted to the city clerk. At this time, I will ask the city clerk to open the ballots and announce the results of the election.
All votes are affirmative.
Okay. With the election being unanimous, I will entertain motion to adopt the subject resolution declaring the results of the special annexation of the election.
By simple motion to adopt the resolution declaring results of special landowner election and direct reporting of notice of special tax. Motion and by title only introduced.
Second.
I have a motion, second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Would you read the title, please?
Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Vacaville levying special tax within the City of Vacaville Community Facilities District Number 11, Cerrito at Vanden Estate.
Thank you. We can move to item 8B, Mr. City Manager.
This evening, item 8B is a public hearing on a resolution approving the Crawford Drive Waterline Benefit District. Tim Burke, from Assistant Public Works Director, will be presenting.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. I'm here tonight to present the formation of the Crocker Waterline Project Benefit District. Benefit districts under Title 14 of the city's Land Use and Development Code allows for a mechanism to reimburse the city or any other property owners who construct public improvements that provide a benefit for future adjacent developments. It provides for a fair and equitable reimbursement during this process. For the Crocker Waterline Benefit District, shown here is the scope of the waterline project. The city installed a 12-inch water line at the end of Crocker Drive near the Mariani fruit packing plant, and proceeded north through the former old Albertsons property over to Midway, and then connected to a 18-inch water line on Eubanks Drive. The Crocker Line Benefit District report was prepared by Coastland Civil Engineering. The Benefit District will remain in effect for 20 years from the date of City Council approval. Each development will pay their fair share based on their property acreage, and the Benefit District fee is shown in the engineer's report and will be adjusted by a CPI. The city sponsored a property owners meeting held on February 6th of this year, and at the last council meeting, resolution of intent was approved for the formation of the district, and set today as the public hearing date. In accordance with Benefit District, the fees are right now set up to be collected at the sooner of a development connecting to the water system that's within the district, or issuance of a building permit by the city for the benefiting property. We also have said in there, and we've had several comments by property owners within the district just recently, that this last item, discretionary approval, be waived. And so staff has discussed this process, and staff agrees that in an effort to get the development moving quicker out there, that it would be better and we're judicious to remove this last item. And so we are requesting council to go ahead and direct staff to strike this last trigger for paying the fee. So when a developer will get their entitlements for developing their property, and they won't have to pay it at that time that they get their entitlements, like a discretionary review or any kind of parcel map. It will be once they start construction and they get a building permit from the city, then they would go ahead and pay the benefit district fee. So our recommendation is by simple motion, adopt the subject resolution forming the Crocker Waterline Benefit District and modify the engineer's report to remove the last trigger for payment at any discretionary approval by the city.
Hi, Alicia Minion again. I have a question on the resolution. It's number 4, the last item on the first page, I think, of the resolution. It says that is the policy of the City Council to require as a condition of a new building permit the payment of fees outlined in the engineer's report on file in the city's engineer's office. It is also noted that the fees collected as outlined will be paid to the appropriate developer on an annual basis and will increase annually in accordance with the city policy. And I had a question on the cash flow because as I was reading this, my impression was that the developer paid, and this says that the fees will be paid to the appropriate developer on an annual basis. And can you please explain that sentence? Thank you.
And thank you for that. It might be that we need a clarification on that because they are paying the fees to the city. The city is going to take those fees and reimburse the water diff. And so we are not paying that back to the original developer. The city developed this project. The city is getting reimbursed for payment of this project. We use diff fees, and so we're going to reimburse the diff fee account. So I'm not sure if Melinda wants to weigh in on that.
Yeah, that was strange. Anyway, so I think in this case, the developer could be read as the city as the developer of that water line. Another option would be just to amend the language to say that the fees will be paid to the city.
Seeing no other public comment, I'll close. Councilwoman Harris.
Yeah, I would just like to say that this was a really great project, putting in the infrastructure for future business. I would like to, make a recommendation with the amended language to state that the payment would be to the city.
To the city.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
Second. Does that include the strike?
Yes.
Okay.
We would request that.
Yes.
Okay. So motion, second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to item 8C, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, item 8C is public hearing requesting ordinance repealing section 2.20040 relating to city council vacancies and a resolution adopting a policy for filling city council vacancies by appointment. So Melinda, as a city attorney, will be presenting this item.
Good evening, Mayor. Tonight, the item before you, as the city manager mentioned, is dealing with filling the city council vacancies, and we're really requesting consideration of two different items. One is an ordinance repealing our current municipal code provisions, addressing vacancies, and the other is discussion and possible adoption of a city council vacancy policy. So starting with the ordinance, and I have to say I'm a little amazed. This PowerPoint of mine had no color or bells and whistles when I put it in the computer today. So thank you to whoever did that. I don't know how it was kind of magic, but in any case, starting with the ordinance. So state law ultimately governs the filling of city council vacancies. And it provides for two methods to fill city council vacancies. The first is a special election. There are two different types of special elections that can occur. One is at a regularly established election. That's like the election that occurred last week, a statewide election. The other time a special election can happen is at a general municipal election. And that is like our November 2020 election, the local election where city council members are elected. The other method is to fill the vacancy by appointment. The state law also allows for cities to adopt one of three different ordinances. The first two options require or deal with special elections, and one of them requires a special election all the time for every filling of every vacancy. The other one requires a special election when you receive a certain number of petitions. The third option allows a city to adopt an ordinance to fill a vacancy by appointment. And when that appointment is followed by a special election, the council has the choice of when to set that election, either at the next regularly established election. Again, that's the statewide election. That's a very expensive process. Or it can be set at the next general election. So in 2007, the city adopted option number 3 and added section 2.20.040 to our municipal code. And the reason the council did that at that time was to address a void that existed in state law at that time, which actually resulted in the council having to make a decision when a vacancy had occurred between calling an expensive special election or filling a vacancy for a long period of time. It was over 3 years at that time. And at that time, the council ultimately decided to fill by appointment, I think probably to avoid the expense, and later adopted this code section that we have in our books now. So, but since that time, state law has evolved, and it's eliminated the long-term appointment concern. And so effectively now under state law, if a council fills a vacancy by appointment, the process varies depending upon when that vacancy occurred. So vacancies that occurred in the first half of the term, but 130 days before a general municipal election, those can initially be filled by appointment, and then they would be followed by a vote at the general election to fill the balance of the vacancy. Or, right one, sorry, that's, writing is kind of small, sorry. So for vacancies filled late in the first half of the term or in the second half of the term, those can be filled by appointment to serve the remainder of the term. So in evaluating the changes to state law and our code sections, we determined that it's really state law has a more streamlined process and a more, probably more cost-effective process. So it's our recommendation at this time that the City Council repeal our municipal code sections and revert to state law to govern the methods of filling vacancies. Oh, so there's and that's kind of small print too. Anyway, that's a flow chart of the state law, how the state law addresses filling vacancies either by calling a special election or by appointment. And I believe that was in your staff report materials. So on to looking at a city council policy on filling vacancies. So the policy is really the nuts and bolts. How do you implement the method of filling a vacancy? And recently the city council directed staff to bring potential policies back to the council for consideration. At that time, or after that request was made, city staff, particularly our city clerk, did a lot of research on cities throughout the state, what they did, how they, what kind of policies they have. And what we found is that most cities don't have a formal policy. They decide on a case-by-case basis how to fill a vacancy. But there were a handful of policies that we were able to look at, either policies or recent procedures that had been used to fill vacancies in other jurisdictions. And so based on that information, staff prepared two proposed policies for your consideration tonight. Both options implement an appointment process that's consistent with the state law that I explained earlier. And both policies, the appointment process under both policies must be completed within 60 days of the vacancy, otherwise a special election must be called, and that is consistent with state law. And the other thing I should mention is that if an appointment, in any case, if an appointment would result in a majority of the council being appointed, then you have to have a special election. The appointment is not an option. So looking at the two proposed policies, the first is a city council nomination process. That process includes the city council declaring the vacancy and adopting a schedule for the appointment process. Applications would then be accepted by the city clerk and provided to the city council. And all applications are public records, so the public would have the ability to also look at those applications. Candidates would then be interviewed at a public meeting, and then the city council members could make nominations, and the city council would vote at a public meeting. The second policy before you tonight is a mayor appointment council ratification process. In that policy, the city council would again declare the vacancy. The mayor would adopt the time schedule for the appointment process. Applications would then be accepted by the city clerk and provided to the mayor. And then again, the applications would still be available to the public and any other council member that wants to look at them. The mayor would interview candidates. The mayor could select up to one other city council member or two others, depending on the size of the council, to assist with those interviews. And then at a public meeting, the mayor would announce the appointment, similar to what's done with Planning Commission, or other commissions, and then the council would vote on the ratification of that. So those are the two policies that are before you tonight. Our recommendation is by title only to introduce the subject ordinance and by simple motion to adopt the subject resolution incorporating one of the policy options provided.
Thank you. I see no questions. I'll open it up to the public.
So the fact that special elections are not even on the table is kind of weird, gross, whatever. So special elections, okay, they cost $400,000. That's a lot of money. You guys decide on a budget of almost $200 million of taxpayer money. Of the people who live in this town pay you guys money. And the person who is currently the vice mayor was appointed to that seat. Is he subject to feeling any sort of indebtment to the three of you sitting here who voted for him? Or is he indebted to the voters who, quite frankly, didn't elect him? And I don't know, and that's not my position to say. But you know what I couldn't say? I couldn't say that if he had a special election. And I think that sitting up here and saying, absolutely not, no special elections, we're not spending money on something like that, when you are more than likely gonna have to appoint a seat for another 2 years. That is 2 years on the council. That is, what, almost $400 million worth of decisions to be made by somebody who was picked by 3 people, 4? So then what happens if a certain council member resigns as of December? 2 council members are up for election. They don't win their election. Are you guys still going to pick that appointed person? I mean, I don't like the mayor appointment any better. I think that you guys should just do special elections. It's just more fair. You get to let people decide. Let democracy work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi guys, Sarah Palmisano, Vacaville resident. Congratulations, Mitch. It appears though you're about to win an election by about 177 votes as of I think 3 p.m. today, which means some people that I'm here representing, because unfortunately they're ill, cannot be here tonight, will be without representation. And they're very uncomfortable with the mayor appointing someone again to a seat of power that frankly they have not earned the people's trust. Do you know about the percentage last time we had this discussion, you guys said a special election would cost $400,000. About what percentage of the city budget is that? Anyone? It's slightly, I think it's around 2% unless I'm mistaken. It is not a large amount considering how much money you guys deal with on a daily basis and that you need the public trust. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elkins. I just want to echo their comments. I would much rather have a special election where all of the citizens in Vacaville can make their desires known. I don't like appointments. I especially don't like the mayoral appointment. I think that it would behoove all of you to not have, give any one person. It's not, you in particular,
Understood.
It's councils from here on out. No one person, or even maybe you get to optional, have another person, not even no 2 persons should be deciding who fills that seat. If you have to do without special elections, and I staunchly prefer the election, but if you have to do without them, I think you have to go with the other option that allows for public input and all of the council to be in on the interviews and all of the council to vote, not just 1 or 2 people. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if we have special elections from here on out, aren't they going to be cheaper? Because the whole city won't be voting anymore. Only the people in that district will be voting. So won't they cost less? Thank you. Okay. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. I know y'all missed me. It's been a long time. I just wanted to say, I wanted to reiterate what everyone said. Basically, it's $400,000 currently for a special election, but over a year or two, you will spend a lot more than that on some of the decisions being made. And I really wanted to speak against the mayor appointment thing, because let's just imagine if I was the mayor and I got to appoint someone, you know, I'd probably just find someone down the street and just, you know, I'm not saying I would really do that, but that's something that I could be able to do. Or I might just put a bunch of leftists up here. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that's something that we should think of both ways. That's just a dangerous slope that we can slide down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, folks, and audience. It's funny, when I read this, I thought we shouldn't be having this discussion. That where me as a constituent reminds the group that democracy is not just an opportunity, but is a responsibility. We elected, most all of you, almost, we elected you because of your beliefs in what it was that you want for our city and how great our city is and how great you want to keep it. And then when we go and concentrate power in one place, and it's no offense to you, Mayor, but when you concentrate power in one place, your votes are no longer equal. You are no longer heard as the elected folks, the ones that we elected and put up there on the dais. It's really important because if all of you interview, you all come from different places, you all have perceptions, you all have a set of ears, you have good judgment, because otherwise we wouldn't have reelected several of you, more than once. But you take all that together, you take the interview, you guys all have expertise in that field because you sit there and you know what it takes, and you know what it takes to be as a group and to have those decisions and to do it together. And because you have that expertise, and because we elected you to do that job, please don't abdicate it, please. Ultimately, what I am saying is not to concentrate that power in a single person or a small hand-picked group, because a group of 3 will beget 4, and 4 will be a majority on a 7-member council. Very important. And basically, we don't abdicate that responsibility. We need all of your voices, all of them, because they're all important, to be heard, because we want all of our voices to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All of the decisions that are made in the city are made by majority vote. Why should this be anything different? Anything that the mayor appoints or the mayor assigns to additional people, it's all based on the mayor's opinion or his agenda. So I feel like we vote for this entire city council, a majority vote. We vote you guys in to represent all of us, and we think you should all be part of the vote of the next person that sits in that seat.
Just for clarification, the way I read it, and I could be wrong, this is city attorney, but under the mayor appointment, I would make the suggestion, council still votes. It's not just I say it and it goes. Okay, I just wanted to clarify if I'm wrong.
That's correct. You would make the recommendation, council would vote on that.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Mayor and council, my name is Roy Stockton. There's been some good points that were brought up today. I don't know why we have to make a decision right this second. If it's not going to cost $400,000 to do a special election in a smaller area, it would be nice before this decision is made to kind of know what that cost would be. This is also one of those situations where I wish the roles were reversed and we could hear what you had to say before we got a chance to come up here and talk. So hopefully you'll make a good decision, and I don't think we need to do anything too hastily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agree that with what most of the people were saying, that a special election would be the best as far as democracy. if the choice is to do an appointment process, then my question is, what happens if the council doesn't ratify the mayor's choice? That's one question. If the second question is, does the appointee have to be from the district that they're appointed to? And again, my priorities would be special election first for the most democracy, and then the city council would be my second choice because there's more votes involved and more people involved in making the decision.
Thank you. We can go ahead and answer.
Sure. So the first question about if the mayor's selection is not ratified, then I would imagine you would just make different recommendations until one's ratified. If none's ratified within that 60-day period, then it would have to go to a special election. So you would have the ability to make further recommendations on that. And as far as the district question, yes, if the vacancy occurred in a specific district, the person filling that vacancy would have to be from that district.
But if it's at large, then it stays at large?
If it's at large, it stays at large, correct.
Councilwoman Harris, did you want to?
I,
We're still open?
Yeah, if we're still open, I'll wait.
Okay.
I'm also advocating to have an option for a special election. Now, if it's just a few months away till the person turns out anyway, I wouldn't advise to have a special election in that situation, but I would like the option of a special election. And when you do determine the cost, can you also look at the cost of a mail-in? Because I believe that's cheaper. I think that's per mail, I think like per unit. So I believe it is cheaper. And number two, I wasn't clear on if there's an appointment process. So if your staff is recommending an appointment process, I think we need policies and procedures on how the appointment would work. And I would advocate that if there is an appointment, that the person appointed be entirely independent in any way. So, maybe they're not married to someone that's an employee. That would be one example of someone that just putting them in a position, especially when negotiating benefits, putting themselves in a position where they might potentially be self-dealing. And I don't believe the current conflict of interest laws in the state covers all instances or types of independence. So I'm hoping that you'll consider that. Thank you.
Afternoon, council, mayor, public, staff. My name is Roberto Valdez. I've been here before several times, and I probably will continue to do it because I believe my participation here is just as important as yours. And with all due respect to the mayor and to the council, especially to Mr. Mashburn, I know there's I'm hearing from the newspaper, there's some elections are still kind of alive. And I'm here just to encourage you to do, in favor of the special election process, that you open this process, that you allow the people, as you heard tonight, to have their voice. It's not only important that we participate, it's also important that we restore our trust in our government. Right now, as you know, and I don't have to explain everything, you see it on every day. There's a lot of cynicism going about the government and how they're our parties, both parties and more parties keep, just getting out of hand, And I will tell you that, and I'll share something with you personally. I participated in inspector at the previous election, and I was really happy, not because I was employed there, but because I felt I was doing my civic duty to encourage people to vote, and people did take their vote seriously. So give them the opportunity. I will tell you that I was over by the Creekside area, on the Nut Tree and Alamo Drive, and we adopted a poll there. I had really good staff people who knew what they were doing, and the people that showed up, every one of them was treated courteously, and everybody voted and had their say-so, and they, what I could detect, they all valued their vote. So I encourage you to do that. Open the process. I know in the past, and because I've seen this from this council, that you appointed people. You know, I think Mr. Hunt came in like that, if I recall correctly. You know, I have nothing against him. I have nothing against you personally, but I will tell you that it's important that you give people, you know, a sense of keeping the faith in our government. You know, just like we keep faith in other ways, it's important that we are encouraged to come here and take positions, whether we like them or not. You know, I like to hear what people like or dislike about what I do, you know, so that I know at least I don't purport to know the truth, and I don't think any of you do either. But, you know, it's important that we allow that opportunity for everybody to come here and open the process, be bold about it, show your leadership tonight, and say, regardless of what the, you know, and I have to say, I don't think I understand the whole process myself, but the options, but I think it's important that we allow that, so we not only do it as participating, but that we give that same leadership opportunity for the next generation that comes after us to do the same. And, you know, so, and let the chips fall where they fall, you know?
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, just a quick question to see if Councilmember Mashburn's seat is at large or is it by district?
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
It's an at-large seat.
Okay. Seeing no other, I'm going to close public comment. And Vice Mayor Beatty,
I'll defer to
Councilwoman Harris.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that I am in favor, based on the changes in state law to repeal the Vacaville Municipal Code. So I would recommend that change be made. In taking a look at, you know, what's been said tonight and reviewing, you know, the fact that there's a handful of cities throughout the state that actually have some type of formal policy around, you know, decision-making for appointments. You know, in the past, the, you know, cost of a special election or at-large was extremely expensive. And especially during the heavy downturn in the economy, it just did not make sense. But the fact that we are going into districts as of this next election in 2020, November 2020, I would like to see what that cost would be per district for conducting a special election, whether it be by mail or whatever that process might be. But I think that would be, we would not be doing a good service to our residents until we did all due diligence so that we could make good decisions. When it comes to, you know, the choices that were put before us tonight, I can say that, you know, more often than not, on commissions, which is different than city council seat, on commissions, it's very rare for any council member to not go with the recommendation of the mayor. But that's because it's a commission seat, and while it carries weight, it's not the same as being up here as an elected or appointed representative. So I'm really not in favor of moving forward with a, you know, mayor recommended appointment. No offense. I'm just saying I think it does require more discussion and input from the community. So I'm of the opinion right now that there's no real need to move on this tonight, that there's still more work that needs to be done and more research to do before any formal recommendation is made in regard to appointment.
I'd like to start my thoughts with a long list of thank yous. It's a shame that Councilman Sullivan's not here because as memory serves, it was his recommendation a couple months ago that council and city staff take a look at a more appropriate, streamlined, efficient way of filling the vacancies. So I wish I could tell him thank you in person. I really appreciate his foresight in that process and trying to make the process more streamlined. I also would like to thank the city manager and just taking lead on the whole thing and directing his staff to look into it and find ways to make it more streamlined, and city attorney and her staff, which has been the result of the work that you've seen here, that the way we've been doing is kind of convoluted, and I'll recount my post-traumatic stress experience with you in the whole process. So I do appreciate city manager and city attorney and her staff for finding a way, which apparently the state has had the foresight to go through and find a way to make it more streamlined. So deferring to the state process. I would also like to say I'm not in favor of a mayor appointment process. I am in favor of a mayor appointment process where the city council gets to vote. So I think that's been a matter of semantics the whole evening. The mayor, whoever the mayor ends up being next 4, 5, 10, 15 years, does not get to decide based on what the city attorney has presented this evening. It has to be ratified by the majority of the council. So I would tell you, obviously I have a personal, as many of you have made a personal reference, I'll just address the personal reference as well. I was appointed by a very strange process where at one point in Vacaville's history, it was the next vote getter, and for some reason they decided not to do that. And then there was a decision made to recommend people, and then there was a decision made to fill out applications, and then there was a decision made where we put together our best 3 to 5 minute presentation and come up and do that. So all kind of a strange process for anyone who was involved in it. It had been a strange process to watch as well, wondering exactly what structure were we using to make those decisions. So again, just a long list of thank yous to Councilman Sullivan and city manager and city attorney for finding a process that streamlined and makes sense. So I do believe this is a way to move forward.
So, having been through this process where we did nominations, and understanding the need for democracy and for a special election should that be required, and hearing everybody tonight, share my thoughts on this. We have a process right now that we use in Vacaville for appointments, as was said before, for commissioners. Very effective, very thorough. In looking at the staff recommendation today, I don't see that necessarily exactly matches the process that we have been using, or our past practice, if you will, in the city. I think that the issue of a seat where you have an at-large position is going away. It will eventually time out very quickly after 2 years, and that will be a moot point and a non-issue. So when we think about this and setting policy for the city, we need to think into the future, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the case might be. When you think about the time limit that the state law that we're talking about implementing imposes on a council with regard to an appointment, no matter who makes it, it's 60 days. It's 4 council meetings, maybe 5, for the council to perform their interviews, put out their applications, do their reviews, and move forward or not move forward with the candidates that may or may not be recommended. So the probability of there being a special election, should the council not be able to agree, whether it's with a mayoral appointment or with a council, full council's appointments, is highly probable. If you think about what we went through last time and the possibility that we might not have selected somebody as a result of that, we very well could have, given this law, ended up in a situation where we would have had to have a special election in an at-large position, which would have costed $400,000. So I think what I would probably propose tonight would be a middle ground, because I want people to be able to have a voice. I want people to be able to have transparency, but I want there to be some level of consistency with past practice and the way that we used to do things. So that said, I think what I would recommend or would ask of the council is that we allow the mayor to make an appointment as they had done in the past, but with the stipulation that when this is changed, when we make the policy, it doesn't say that the mayor may have a council member present for the interview. It should say that he will. And then I would also say that it should say that we will have a member of the public at large present for the interview process, so that there's transparency to the public, so that they have the ability to make, have input and ask questions of those individuals in the interview process. Again, I think that it all comes down to the entire council with regard to a vote on whether those people who are recommended based on the interview process are appropriate for the position or not. And the interview process, by my understanding, is a public hearing, correct? It is going to be held in a public fashion. So the public will have the ability to ask questions at that hearing?
Sorry, which hearing are you talking about?
The interview. The public will have the ability to ask questions or have, at least have input?
Under the mayor appointment.
Under the mayor appointment?
No, those would be private interviews, the way the policy is written right now, under the mayor appointment process.
All right.
But it would be open to the public at the appointment night.
Correct.
That's what I want to say. The public gets their say, right? They get to come in and have input at some point in that process.
They would at the public, the meeting
Yes.
where you appoint the person.
Correct.
Yes, not at the interview stage, though.
The problem that I see with the 7 folks all making recommendations is that what we saw on the evening that we had here, where we almost were unable to make a determination and unable to make an appointment. I want to avoid that and avoid the issues that would bring for the council and for the city, because I think it would push us every time into the election, every process. We would end up in that special election, and that may not necessarily be good for the city either. So my recommendation would be that we move forward with the mayoral appointment with the changes to the policy that say that the mayor will include at least one member of the council, and the mayor will include one member of the public at large in the interview process, so that there's some transparency and some insight into the process for everyone. That would be my recommendation.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
And I'm going to open on a question, but the motion was made, so. And I still would like to have, if we can get Nolan, if no one,
I don't think he's on the line anymore.
he's not on the, okay.
Yeah, his line dropped.
Yeah, I think he's listening in, but I don't think he can
Okay,
participate.
Councilwoman Harris.
So the motion has been made, it's been seconded. I have some concerns and some questions about.
Public is closed. Public is closed.
So I'm just, when it comes down to, first I have a question, clarifying question. So because a lot of people have brought up, Councilmember Mashburn and his potential election win for supervisor. So his is a at-large position. Would that change over, or we're talking until 2022? It stays that way?
That's correct.
So whoever gets appointed would be at-large. It could be anybody in the city.
That's correct.
For his position. Okay. My next question is, when it comes down to, this next election, we're going to end up going into districting and rapidly ramping up into 7 people up here. And there was a very valid question that was brought forward that should there be, an appointment by the mayor and it was ratified by 4 council members instead of 6, is there anything that we can do to add some language that indicates it has to be whatever that, it used to be 4/5, yeah, it used to be 4/5, whatever it would be now.
Yeah, some kind of
I
super
think-
majority
yeah.
or,
Yeah,
I think you could add some language.
I mean, I think that if that's the direction this is going, you know, and I'm not in favor of the direction, but I would like some safeguards. So I would like a supermajority. I don't know how my fellow council members feel about that.
I believe we have Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Sullivan, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Good. Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
So I'm sorry about the tech, guys. I'm in Central America and the network's crazy. I agree with Dilena's comments earlier. Totally understand everything you guys are saying. I would really like to hear the cost of a special election with districts and make a decision in a later council meeting. That is just my opinion as one council member, but I think that is probably the best thing for democracy, and that's really what I think I would go with. So I'd love to hear the cost estimated to bring that back to council. We make decisions on multi-million-dollar contracts with a 3-2 vote, and I think that it's really important that even if we spent a little bit of money, it could totally swing the direction of a contract or a multi-million-dollar decision. And I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you heard that. Sorry I couldn't be there.
We did. Thank you. Councilmember Mashburn.
One other thing that I'd like to add that I left out, that I was looking down here through the policy and want to make sure would also be included in my motion, is that it also include the option for the council, because it's not in any of these policies, as was stated earlier, should they not select I mean, they could let it time out, and that would be one way to get to the vote, I would imagine, to get to the special election. But I would like to have the special election option included in the options for the mayor and the council. So if the council was not to ratify, but they had the majority vote, I would like them to have the option of voting in a special election. Is that possible to do?
I'm not sure I follow.
So if we went through the process, the mayor made a recommendation after the interview process with the other council member and the member of the public, and it was not ratified by the 7 members of our council, then rather than have to wait and have some type of crazy debates go on up here for the next 3 council meetings and all kinds of angst created, I would like there to be the ability of the council to be able to have to order in a special election. I would like that option added. Is that if they have a majority, if the people who don't want one of those elections has a majority and wants to be able to do a special election, I want them to have that option.
We can write that option in.
So that would be my
amended motion.
If I can comment
Sure.
on one item that concerns me a little bit is including a member of the public in the interview process. That feels like a creation of a committee that consists of more than council members, which raises some Brown Act issues. So I'd want to look at that, be able to evaluate that to make sure we're not creating a Brown Act.
You want to pull that?
All right, I can. Can I make it so that they're an observer and they don't have a vote in the process? I mean, I want there to be transparency for the public. I want them to know that the process is.
Yeah. I'm not sure that you could have one member of the public in that kind of closed meeting.
All right, I'll withdraw that.
Part of your motion?
Yes.
Okay. Councilwoman Harris.
So I want clarification, please, on the amendment to call a special election if the majority of council does not ratify the mayor's decision. Are you saying that you then have another, I mean, I don't understand how that would work, because bottom line, if you have, 4 out of 7 or 5 out of 7 that vote for it, for whatever the appointment is, what's the point of saying, yeah, we'll give you an option for a special election? It makes no sense.
Right now, that option doesn't exist. So if everybody didn't vote if the mayor made a recommendation and 4 of the 7 people voted against it, then my understanding of the process now is the mayor would go back to the drawing board and come back to the council with another recommendation at another time. What I'm saying is that I would like them to have the opportunity, that those 4 individuals wanted to move forward with a special election at that time, to do so. But right now, there's no provision in that policy at all for there to be a special election, except for letting it time out after 60 days. So that was my proposal.
So the way I thought I understood it, though, if the mayor selects someone or tries to appoint someone and the council says no, then I would say another person, and the council can say, kind of like what we did in our last appointment. So I would want more clarification from his motion, because would it be after that, nobody gets anywhere and then we vote, or it wouldn't be just after the first one, and there might be more people that don't like the first one and then maybe like the second, it could be.
Yeah, you have flexibility on how you write that policy. So if you want to exhaust all your options that night, and then
we could do it
make the vote
I would be fine with that. Yeah, after exhausting all options. Then,
at that meeting, at that
particular
meeting.
So I made a comment about having a supermajority, and I haven't heard anybody address that.
So when you say a supermajority, you want 5 votes of the 7 votes?
I think you could set it at 5, you could set it at 6, you could set it at a unanimous vote.
I'll make my comments. So the last appointment that I was part of, there were 4 of us up here, minus Mr. Beatty, that all said that none of us wanted to go out to a special election. We all voted that way. I know Councilmember Sullivan changed his mind after we came back with the idea of an appointment process, but we are all on the same page that it just doesn't make sense. And I understand people are like, hey, it's just 400,000, just 500,000. But in my opinion, I don't want to spend any of the taxpayers' money on an election that is going to sit up here for 2 years, and then they're going to get their chance to go ahead and elect him or her in at that point. So I don't want to have a special election, and I'll make that statement. The other statement I wanted to make is, it's, especially when there's going to be 7 people up here, it was incredibly hard to decide. I know it's the button and I know the light comes on first, but who was going to get that first appointment? And who was, and I sat back and not made an appointment because I was the mayor and I was trying to be the leader up here and not want my person. But I remember, I think it went from you and then to Elena and then to Nolan and then to me and then back to you. And it was difficult here because I didn't even get to chime in. And there'll be 7 sitting up here, or 6, depends on what election that will be. So that's the reason why I would back your motion. If you want to clarify your motion, I would appreciate it.
Okay, so let me run through it again. So my motion would be that we have a mayoral appointment. Sure that they have their voice heard at the actual vote. But I would like to make sure that there is participation in the interview process by the council. So I would say at least one should be will. You should include at least one no matter what. And the other one can be an option. You could add the second. And I don't think it should rest solely with the mayor, because again, down the road, we don't know who the council is, who the mayor is going to be. We should at least have that level of inclusion. I would say that I would like to have my motion should also include, after the list of of nominees, if you will, is exhausted, that the council have the option of including a special election at that time, at that meeting, to make that determination. And that's where I'll leave my motion. I don't know that we would, I don't know that I would be supportive of a supermajority, because with 7 people, I don't know that you would be able to obtain that. I just don't
So
know.
that was a motion.
That was my
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
You want a roll call vote? Nolan, are you still there? Okay. And you were no?
Right.
Okay. So it was 3-1. If we can't get Mr. Sullivan back on the line.
I think he actually said preference was not to do this.
He's not here to vote. Okay, we'll move forward. Do you need to do the title?
You made a motion on the policy, but there was no motion on the ordinance.
Oh,
So if you want to do
I
something.
make a motion that we adopt the subject ordinance as well.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's 4-0.
And now we need to read the.
And now read the title, please.
Ordinance repealing section 2.20.040 of chapter 2.20 of the Vacaville Municipal Code relating to city council vacancies.
Okay, now we'll move to item 9A, Mr. City Manager.
Item 9A this evening is a resolution to accept solid waste, recyclable, and green waste collection special rate adjustment. I have Brian McLean from Public Works here to present.
Now for something completely different.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Okay. In 2017, the worldwide recycling market was jolted as China, the largest importer of recyclable goods in the world, implemented their National Sword policies. National Sword is strict contamination standards whereby materials must contain less than 0.5% contamination. This caused an industry-wide market imbalance as the cost to process those materials at that threshold was more expensive than the commodity price. Due to this market imbalance, recycling centers have been closing. You may have heard about Replanet. They closed 284 locations in California. Waste collectors have been impacted, and government and municipalities holding agreements with those waste collectors have also been impacted. To give you an idea of the scope, it's mountains and mountains of recyclables. Recyclables are stockpiling in warehouses and ports all across America. It's building up to mountains because there's no place to take it. As you know, Recology, RVS, is the city's franchise hauler for our solid waste and recyclables. RVS has exclusive rights to collect our recyclables, and they sell those recyclables as a commodity product to help offset their operating costs, whereby they also lowers our overall rates. Due to the impact of National Sword on Recology's operating costs, in September of 2018, Recology requested a special rate adjustment. Section 12.01 of our franchise agreement allows Recology to make this special rate request. There are 3 provisions that Recology must prove. 1, an eligible event has occurred. 2, increased costs or decreased revenues have incurred. And 3, the amount of the increase is reasonable. In October of 2018, the city contracted HF&H Consultants. They are our recycling industry experts, and we began analyzing the data submitted by Recology for calendar year 2017 through 2019. Based on that analysis, the financial impact was calculated at approximately $434,000, and a 3% rate adjustment would cover that shortfall. On February 25th of this year, Recology submitted a revised rate adjustment request of 3%. For comparison, rate increases due to National Sword in our region range from approximately 2.6 to 7.4%. And you can see Recology's request of 3% is on the lower end of that scale. In terms of the data analysis and findings, pursuant to our franchise agreement, section 12.01, Recology has proved in the affirmative that an eligible event has occurred. The event has increased their costs, and the request of 3% is reasonable. On fiscal impact, we're looking at a 3% increase in solid waste, recycling, and green waste collection rates. That 3% will remain in effect until the city determines the market conditions have changed such that recyclable values have gone up and the 3% can be eliminated. Upon acceptance by the City Council, these new rates would become effective June 1st of this year, and there is no impact to the general fund as a result of this action. The recommendation is by simple motion to adopt the subject resolution. That completes my presentation. Samantha and I are here to answer questions, as well as Rob Hilton with HF&H, our consultant. And finally, I'd like to thank Recology for working with the city to address this challenge over the last 14 months.
Councilwoman Harris.
Just for clarification purposes, and maybe I missed it when you said it, but this is on commercial?
Commercial businesses, correct.
Okay. And do we have any idea what that, I mean, every business is different, but sort of what the average increase would be dollar-wise?
Do you have those rates by chance? In the packet, there's the rate sheets in your submitted packet. We're digging up right now.
And then my second question is, there will be a request coming at some point in time for residential? And when might that be? What might that be? And what would that?
So this only is impacting excuse me, I will go back one step. This does impact residential and commercial. National Sword does impact residential and commercial. Sorry, I'm confusing it with the next item.
Okay.
The rates are, again, the rate packets are included in your packet there. I don't think I have a copy of it on me. It's a 3% increase overall within each category.
Brian, if I could help, it's page 109 in your packet.
Thank you, Jeremy. About $6 per resident, per business.
Per business, okay. All right, thank you.
I see no other questions. We'll open it up to the public comment.
So now I'm confused. It is residential, correct? It's both residential and commercial? I heard it was and it wasn't. Okay. I understand the problem. I would hope that if there is a change, because there's a lot of talk out there about other countries maybe picking up the slack, about the US doing our own recycling and picking up the slack, I would hope that maybe there would be a way to reverse this or change it if that changes. I heard you say that, but often we're told things like that and they never come to pass. So I'm really hoping for that. I just want everybody to keep in mind too that Recology just upped our fees in January by 2.72%. So in my mind, this is a 5.72% increase. You know, not just a 3%. So it's getting a little expensive in certain corners of our city. Thanks.
I can address some of those challenges there. The secondary markets, such as Indonesia, have been also, as China started to shut down on importing of those recyclable goods, the secondary markets started to pop up, Indonesia being one of them. They too are now being flooded. There's just too much recyclable content that's being pushed around the world and not enough processing centers at this point, thereby that turmoil in the market. This is a one-time rate increase, meaning that every year we go through a process where Recology requests, if they deem that they have a CPI-based increase, which is part of the franchise agreement that they're allowed to put forward, if they see additional costs related to National Sword, every year we have the ability, staff, the city has the ability to analyze that in relation to what's going on in the marketplace at that time. If there are changes with the recyclable value commodities, if they go up and this 3% is no longer needed, that would be withdrawn.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, I'm going to close public comment.
The comp cities that were on the presentation, I wasn't clear. Do they also have Recology? And also the comp cities, what was their base rate as compared to Vacaville? So it would be interesting to know. I mean, I saw rate increases, but it's not very meaningful unless you know what the base rate is. And if that service is more expansive than what we get. I don't know if this is an apples to apples comparison. And then also with regard to the eligible event, I actually wasn't clear on exactly what types of analysis was done by Recology that would justify the 3%. So that 3% is derived on some kind of analysis, and I'm curious what that is. And then when the speaker said that if it's not justified anymore, they can take it back down, I was wondering how is Recology going to be monitoring that? And then lastly, I was wondering, are we stuck with Recology? Does the city have the option to use another provider? And maybe there's somebody else that does the same thing Recology does at a cheaper rate. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none. Oh.
Question's going to be answered.
Sure. Sure.
So in terms of the comparison cities, we did not go out and look for specific Recology organizations. We wanted to keep it as broad as possible. These are regional impacts based on National Sword. Base rates were not analyzed because each city is absolutely fundamentally different in how they operate and their costs associated with their franchise agreement. In terms of looking at removing the 3% on an annual basis, the city goes through a process whereby we analyze the requests associated with Recology's request for any kind of rate increase. We have hired experts. HF&H is sitting behind me. They are on our side. They're an industry expert in this area in terms of doing that analysis. In terms of the questions that were asked, I won't give you a expansive, but I'll give you a sampling, some of the probing that the city did over the 14 months that this went on. We asked about their operating results, or is the request based on their operating results or projections? What is the average commodity value by material type and by month? What is the commodity contamination mix for the city as compared to other agencies using the same processing facilities? What reasonable business efforts has Recology taken outside of requesting a rate increase to minimize and mitigate the recycling marketplace challenges? Revenue acquired by commodity by month, please provide. Tons sold by commodity by month, please provide. We went through, and this is just a sampling, again, 14 months of analysis. This is not being given over lightly. Our calculations show that the 3% is in the ballpark of what the impact of Recology has been since 2017. That was their request submitted on February 25th. And so as far as staff is concerned, they have met all the provisions of the franchise agreement as they were required to prove.
Thank you.
My name is Wendy Brecken. I guess just in general, we pay a lot of taxes. I know he's saying that 3% is, I think, $6 per unit or business or resident, but we just had increases, and when you add up all the other taxes we're paying with water and ambulance and property taxes, and so it adds up. And so I guess I just want you to please think about, before you raise these taxes, is it really necessary? What profit is this company making? It's an exclusive agreement. What would happen if you didn't do the increase? Would they terminate their agreement? Would there be other companies that could do it for cheaper? I think this is all about recycling. Is there something else we can do about recycling? Maybe if China's not taking all the recyclables, I'm not sure, are all cities still recycling? Does it make sense still to do that? I know that's politically incorrect to ask, but I don't know if it makes sense with the cost-benefit analysis.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close it. Did you want to answer?
CalRecycle is the state agency that dictates the recycling parameters and mandates that come down to the cities. We are obligated through CalRecycle to meet certain thresholds in terms of our recycling, of which it needs to be reported annually to them. So we are beholden to certain measures, and recycling is a big key part of what the state of California is pushing for. So to pull the plug on it is not in the realm of potential. They have, within the legislation, they have financial penalties if we don't meet certain thresholds that could get fairly large. Recology, I was actually part of the team back in 2011 and 2012 that wrote the franchise agreement. It is a long, arduous process. That particular RFP was extremely extensive. Mary, you were part of the oversight committee on that. Completely transparent. I'm actually very proud of that document. The franchise agreement gives, as it's been awarded by council, it gives Recology exclusive rights to our solid waste collection as well as our recycling. They are within their rights in this request. On our side, as far as city staff is concerned, my job is analyze the numbers. Does it make sense? Is the request reasonable? And our outside expert is telling us, based on the analysis, that yes, their request of 3% is reasonable. They have been impacted.
Okay. I'll entertain motion.
So moved.
Second. on the question? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. We'll move to item 9B.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 9B this evening is a repeat from Brian. So a second item, this is a resolution approving Amendment 1 to the agreement of Vacaville and Recology Solano.
Okay, round two. Senate Bill 1826 went into effect January 2015. It requires jurisdictions to implement an organic waste collection program for commercial businesses. The purpose is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the decomposition of organic materials in landfills. It's been structured into 4 phases, requiring impacted commercial businesses to subscribe to a commercial organic waste collection program. And you can see from the slide the various 4 phases. And on the far right, I've put the impacted number of businesses here in Vacaville. You can see phase 1, we had 5 impacted businesses. And this past January, with phase 4, 853 impacted businesses. As our franchise agreement written in 2012 had no provision for a commercial organic waste collection program, a pilot program was developed for phase 1 and phase 2. And it allowed the city and Recology to collect various data points as well as perform outreach to commercial businesses. However, with the transition from phase 1 to phase 2, the number of impacted businesses exceeded the capacity of that pilot program. At that point, we knew phase 3 was going to require operational changes by Recology. And pursuant to the franchise agreement, which we've spoken about earlier, Section 12.01C, it would trigger the special rate adjustment provision. And real quick, rates shall be adjusted from time to time to cover contractors' reasonable increased costs or decreased revenues in connection with a change in law. With that said, staff set out to develop an entirely new program, a commercial organic waste collection program. Our program goals included developing a program that obviously met the state mandate, but it was scalable, that would meet phase 3 and phase 4, and act as a bridge to Senate Bill SB 1383, forthcoming in January of 2022, which adds additional organic mandates to us. We instituted cost controls. We wanted to make sure we minimized the commercial business rate impact, and that we wanted to have a goal of a 75% of solid waste rate, meaning the commercial rates that we finally would land on, we wanted those to be 75% of the solid waste rate, cheaper. That would allow for individual or commercial businesses to be able to encourage that migration from solid waste, the higher cost solid waste, to the cheaper cost commercial organic waste. We wanted to develop options and choices for businesses, and finally, we wanted to ensure that we updated Section 8.03, the public outreach section in the franchise agreement. In September 2018, the city contracted with HF&H, again, our expert recycling industry consultants. And in October 2018, we started discussions with Recology about this new program. During the many months of discussions, nearly 20 business topics were discussed related to the program details and Recology's operating costs. Some of those discussion points, business points, included additional routes, how and when to add additional routes, revenue migration from solid waste to commercial organic waste, truck maintenance cost, employee cost, insurance, supplies, service frequency, containers, contamination of containers. We even got down to stamps. After more than a year of discussion, in December of 2019, a mutual agreement was finally reached on those program business points. And with that, I'll turn it over to Samantha to go over those business points.
Thank you. So following those months of discussion and development, ultimately, it yielded a program that satisfies each of those goals and objectives that were set at the start of the negotiation process. Under the new program, subscribers will be given a choice of bin between a plastic toter, which you see there on the left. Most of us are familiar with those. They're part of our residential program. Alternatively, we also will offer a metal bin that you see there on the right. In addition to that, customers will have a choice of size. Plastic toters will be available in both 32 and 64 gallon sizes. And our metal bins will be available in 4 different sizes, ranging from 1 cubic yard up to 4 cubic yards. There'll also be options to have service up to 3 times per week. No 2 businesses are alike, and one size doesn't fit all. So by providing options like these, it allows businesses to customize their service to fit their specific needs. And unlike mixed recycling, organic waste is not sent to a materials recovery facility for sorting. Therefore, contamination can be a concern. But with the help of Recology, we've developed an approach that provides an opportunity for education. So if a bin is found to contain unacceptable materials, it'll be tagged by a driver. That tag will indicate the material that is not acceptable, and it will give our customers an opportunity to remove the item or those materials. And if they choose to do that, Recology will return and perform a pickup at no cost. And because we are expanding this program, Recology will be hiring a Waste Zero specialist to assist in the implementation and ongoing support of the program. The Waste Zero specialist acts as a liaison between the city and Recology and works together with city staff to provide assistance to customers. Additionally, the Waste Zero specialist performs data collection and reporting for the city's annual report to CalRecycle. They also assist in distributing public education and outreach materials, and all of this has been detailed in the proposed changes to the public outreach section of the franchise agreement. The proposed changes to Section 8.08 identify the specific activities and responsibilities of both city staff and Recology staff, all of which have been designed to meet CalRecycle's public education and outreach requirements. Now, as Brian stated a few moments ago, the goal going into these negotiations was to set the rates for the commercial organic waste collection program at 75% of the equivalent solid waste container rates. That way we could encourage businesses to migrate from trash over to recycling. But through working with Recology, we were able to achieve even lower rates. The rates proposed tonight are set at 72.35% of the solid container rates. And not only does this provide additional incentive for new businesses to subscribe for organic waste collection, but it also means that commercial customers that currently subscribe to the organic waste collection pilot program, they will see a rate reduction and a lower garbage bill with this program. With that, I'll pass it back over to Brian to talk about the fiscal impact.
Okay, fiscal impact. This is a new program, completely new program, and a new set of rates. As Samantha just mentioned, 72.35% of the solid waste rates. Amendment number 1 details the process that the city will utilize in analyzing the need for additional routes to support this new program. And regarding existing solid waste rates for commercial businesses, this is important. For calendar year 2020, there will be no impact to the existing solid waste rates for commercial businesses through this calendar year. We consider this a win-win for our commercial businesses. Not only do we get a new program at a lower rate than our solid waste, lower than our goal, but we also ensure that the solid waste rates for commercial businesses will not be affected for this calendar year. With council's approval, this program, the new rates, will become effective June 1st, 2020, and there's no impact to the general fund as a result of this action. And the recommendation, by simple motion, adopt the subject resolution. Again, Samantha and I are here to answer any questions, as is Rob Hilton from HF&H. And again, I would like to extend a hearty thanks to Recology for the months of effort, back and forth discussions, and working on the details of this program.
Councilmember Harris.
So I wanted to say thank you to Recology for the work that you did to make this possible for businesses to begin implementing this program. So, but back to my question from the last one, it's coming to residents, isn't it? When will it be?
When is it going to be here?
Yep.
So as soon as we're done tonight, I suspect tomorrow morning we'll be working
on it?
Yeah. Senate Bill 1383, it goes into effect January 1st of 2022. It includes a whole slew of new mandates, and yes, residential is part of the mix. And that's why we wanted to ensure that in the development of this program that we made it scalable enough that we don't have to scrap the year and a couple months that we worked on this. We'll be able to kind of transition over a big bulk of what we've developed tonight into that next phase, which is to be coming.
Well, I do appreciate that, Brian, and I know you and your staff have done a tremendous job over the years with everything that you've been, in charge of, and you've done a great job here, so thank you.
Vice Mayor Beatty?
Some of this sounds like that horrible nightmare of the cell towers. Somebody somewhere decided we have to have cell towers and tells us how to do it and when to do it. So all this legislation coming down on you and you trying to find a way to make it work for everyone. I know it's an enormous amount of work on your part. And as Councilman Harris was saying, we're so grateful for it. And I do want to point out, it's not just a convenience issue either. It's a health issue. Managing this properly for the residents is a huge health concern. So thank you for getting bad news in the mail from the state and finding some way to make it work for everyone in our city. We really appreciate it.
Seeing no other comments from the council, I'll open it up to public comment. Seeing none, I'll close public comment.
By simple
Entertain motion.
adopt the subject resolution.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It's a 4-0 vote. I would just like to direct staff, being that I have been through the process of bringing a new garbage company in, and it's horrible. And Recology's been doing such a great job. I'd really recommend staff bring back, maybe talking about maybe an extension for there. So when these new things pop up, we already have it established with this company, and they've been doing great with us. And I, again, appreciate everything you guys have done. So if we can bring that back, I would appreciate it. We will move on to item 9C, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 9C this evening is a resolution of the council suspending the implementation of the planned growth ordinance for calendar years 2020 through 2024. Barton and Fred for Community Development are here to present.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the City Council. So this item is a resolution suspending the implementation of the planned growth ordinance for the calendar years 2020 through 2024. I don't have slides prepared for this item. I hope my description will be adequate to enable you to follow the project and ask me any questions. So the item is related to recently adopted state legislation, Senate Bill 330, which seeks to remove constraints on the construction of housing in the state of California. So SB 330 directs that cities shall not implement zoning or land use regulations that cap the number of residential of housing units that can be approved or constructed each year for the time period that is mentioned in the resolution. The city has in the Land Use and Development Code Division 14.05, which is called the Planned Growth Ordinance. The Planned Growth Ordinance does allocate residential building permits on an annual basis. It requires all residential projects to apply for and acquire allocations for their permits. And the city evaluates under this portion of the Land Use and Development Code permit activity each year and determines how many allocations will be allotted each calendar year. So because this process conflicts with the provisions of SB 330, the city staff recommend that the City Council adopt the resolution included in your staff report suspending implementation of the planned growth ordinance for the time period. And we think this is the proper way to demonstrate to the state the city's compliance with the directives of SB 330. It will certainly assist us when we prepare that annual report on the status of the general plan, which will be coming to you, I believe, at your next meeting, and when we submit that to the state to show how we're complying with all the various elements of state planning law that are adopted each year. So that concludes my presentation. We'll be happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
I see no questions from the council. I'll open it up to the floor. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
By simple motion, adopt the subject resolution.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 4-0. We'll move to item 9D, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 9D this evening has an incredibly long title, so I'm not going to read it, but I did want to take a moment to introduce Tim Patton, our Development Manager. We haven't got him in front of you very often since he's been here, but he's been busy at work, and item he's bringing for this evening is an opportunity for us to look at activating some city property downtown on a temporary basis for the summer. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. This evening I'd like to present to you the Downtown Vacaville Summer 2020 Activation Project to you this evening. The Downtown 2020 Vacaville Activation Project would seek to activate 2 city-owned properties in downtown Vacaville. These sites are currently underutilized, and it is the city's desire to bring new energy and activity to the sites in summer of 2020. Recently, staff has received several inquiries from business owners and residents of Vacaville and beyond Vacaville, seeking ways to increase activity and vibrancy in downtown Vacaville. By opening these 2 sites for a temporary use, it would allow both business owners and the city of Vacaville to optimize these sites during the summer of 2020. This project really subscribes to the philosophy of placemaking economic development. Placemaking economic development is defined by the project for public spaces. The definition that they use is the project, capitalizes on a local community's assets, inspiration, and potential, ultimately creating good public space that promotes people's health, happiness, and well-being. In addition to placemaking economic development, this project puts the downtown streetscape and connectivity plan into direct action. So there's 2 properties that we're looking to activate this summer. The first property you might be familiar with is at the intersection of Dobbins and East Monte Vista, serves as a key entry point into downtown Vacaville. The high traffic corner of the intersection is regarded as an optimal place for food, retail, and entertainment uses. The parcel is approximately 25,000 square feet with approximately 16,000 square feet of usable space. Parking is available on Dobbins Street across from the property on the west side of Dobbins. The second property the city of Vacaville would like to activate this summer is Site 3 of the previously established East Main project. The property is vacant and sits on the east side of the intersection of McClellan Street and School Streets in downtown Vacaville. The parcel is 57,064 square feet with approximately 22,000 square feet of usable space. The city envisions a retail and/or community enrichment project, such as a farmer's market or temporary outdoor movie theater or public art project at the site. Here are some possible site activation activities for both properties. As you can see in the pictures, we have movies in the park, bocce ball, a beer garden, and a farmer's market. Please note that the vendors for the project will go through a thorough approval process to apply to all city standards. Some of the specifics requirements for the approval of selected tenants. Any vendor on the site must comply with all administrative and legal requirements of the city, including those of planning, building, public safety, and utilities division's approval. The RFP must specify the site, whether it's East Monte Vista in Dobbins or the East Main site, Site 3, on which the use is proposed. Vendors, and this is important to note, vendors may not submit proposals for both sites. Partnerships with other vendors will be allowed, however. Proposed uses must meet requirements for the sites to be utilized in a manner that is consistent with state and federal laws pertaining to accessibility and ADA requirements. No permanent alterations may be made to the property, and a fee of $1 will be due for each individual vendor at each of the 2 properties to avoid a gift of public funds to a private entity. It's also important to note that the RFP has been vetted internally by city staff in the development team meeting and project review committee. RFP proposals submitted must include company and owner name, address, email, telephone number, and we strongly encourage first-time vendors to apply. Resume of the principal, previous experience, 3 references, days and hours of operation, including move-in and move-out. Provide a proposed layout of site and description of the business. Identify revenue source to fund the temporary project. And last but not least, and most importantly, a statement on why you love Vacaville. The RFP schedule, as you can see, is on a relatively tight timeline. After the council approval, the RFP will likely be released tomorrow. The actual window the RFP will be open is just shy of 3 weeks, with a March 30th deadline for vendors to submit.
This expedited schedule is to ensure that the selected vendors have enough time to gather permits and other licenses needed to be fully operational by this June. Please note that the schedule will not conflict with Fiesta Days in May. The selection committees will include the following individuals: Vacaville Mayor Ron Roulette, Brooke Fox of the Downtown Vacaville Business Improvement District, Tyra Hayes, Senior Planner with the City of Vacaville, who's the project manager for the Downtown Streetscape and Connectivity Plan, and myself. Just a couple of successful examples of kind of activation projects in downtown Sacramento and midtown Sacramento. Opened in 2015 is the Federalist, and they converted an old shipping container into a kind of a beer tap house establishment. It's widely successful, and they have both pizza and outdoor TVs in the establishment. It's very, very popular in downtown Sacramento. One kind of unique example I found in Michigan was more of an animated public space that has kind of art and just a lot of kid activity, kind of creates a healthy social connection with the community and supports high quality experience for downtown residents, workers, and visitors. I think there's a couple of coffee shops in this picture, so it's kind of a hybrid of some retail, but also art and recreational activities. So our recommendation for this evening is by simple motion, authorize staff to conduct a streamlined request for proposal for the activation and short-term lease of a portion of city-owned property at the corner of East Monte Vista and Dobbins, and city-owned property located at the eastern end of the intersection of School Street and McClellan Street. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Great presentation. I'm excited to see how this works out. Outside the box thinking, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I see no other council comments. I'll open up the floor.
All you do, but timing is, yesterday on Facebook, we had some bad news. You know, we lost Main Street Barbecue. We lost the theater restaurant across the street. The post office restaurant was shut down. And I hope La Brigada stays there, but we can't seem, Creekside, we can't seem to keep restaurants open. So I don't know the answer, but I'm asking the question, what's the deal? I mean, it's really sad that we lost Main Street Barbecue. Obviously, they lost a lot of their inventory with the PG&E shutdown, but maybe we could have helped them. You know, they lost thousands of dollars and weren't able to recover, at least according to their Facebook. But, you know, we're going to do some new things, but we can't keep things open. I mean, the Main Street Barbecue was a donut place. It didn't stay open, and it just doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good. So I don't know what we can do, but it's just not good when good places, you know, places that we like to go to, can't afford or whatever to stay in downtown. Just a comment.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comments, I'll close public comments, entertain motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item 9E, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, item 9E is a presentation of the draft strategic plan. As you may all remember from your post-traumatic stress syndrome, we spent 7 quality hours together with Mr. Bob Dees from Management Strategies Group. He helped facilitate discussion of the strategic plan. The goal for this evening is to receive Bob's presentation of that draft summary and for Bob to receive input from all of you, and that we would bring back an item at a later council meeting, the 24th or the 1st of April, to adopt that plan.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, and Council, it's a pleasure to be back in Vacaville. After seeing those pictures in the previous presentation, I think I'm going to be stopping by here during the summertime.
We'll take your money.
That's pretty impressive. So I am here to talk about the strategic plan. I think it's an exciting time for the city. It really is. I think this document goes a far way to communicate the direction and the priority of your council towards staff. And if I was a resident of this city and I read this document, I'd be very proud of my council, because it's clear you have your eyes on the ball and priorities and the future direction emerging issues in the city of Vacaville. What I'm going to talk about briefly is each of these issues, provide some background to the strategic plan. I'm going to go over the project work plan and where we are in that process. I'll talk briefly about the vision and mission, key components of any strategic plan, strategic goals, and also strategic initiatives as well. So for background, this is your strategic plan. You're the one that directed to compile this forward-thinking document. For the benefit of the audience, what the heck is a strategic plan? Well, it's a call for everybody to get into and buy into and impact the unified vision of the city. It's my understanding you're going to have a couple of new council members here pretty soon. What a perfect time to have a tradition like this, both communicating to the new council members the direction of the city and provides them an opportunity to impact that, the vehicle for future changes to the direction of the city. It's a structured process that anticipates and plans for the future. It's about execution, turning plans and dreams into reality. There are agencies that have strategic plans, and that was the end game. Adopting a strategic plan, it ended up in a cabinet or it ended up as a doorstop. It's about executing your dreams as well. That's a key component of your strategic plan. I'll talk a little bit about that. It starts with an introspective look at the city organization. I'll get into that. And then turning on the high beam, just like you do with your car, looking around the next corner and anticipating it before it's at the steps of City Hall. The more you anticipate, the more you can manage something, and it's more difficult when it's at the steps of City Hall. It's really about meeting the future now, not waiting, managing your future now. So what was the project work plan? Staff started with an inventory of the strengths, the weaknesses, and opportunities and threats the city is facing, either currently or around the corner. And then your council saw that draft and you made amendments to that SWOT list. And then you had a public workshop. You solicited public input. You discussed the vision and mission statement that you inherited, and you made some changes to the vision. And then you went a little bit more specific. You described strategic goals that provide more meat to that vision and mission statement. Then you reviewed the SWOTs in these two public workshops, and what are the ones that kept you up at night, the ones you felt were going to really impact those strategic goals in your vision. And you took those SWOTs and you talked about, let's take on some initiatives to manage those SWOTs. And you talked briefly about what you wanted to see in those strategic initiatives. Then the next step is today, council regular meeting. You're going to again solicit public input, and then you're going to consider adopting a strategic plan. Not today, mind you, the city manager is saying bring it back on the 24th if you're ready for it. And then plan implementation. I'll talk about that briefly later. So what's the mission statement? Well, it briefly describes why the city exists, why it's important to focus on today. So the mission you have today, you reaffirm this is the one you want. Our mission is to understand and balance our citizens' needs, desires, and resources to achieve the highest possible quality of life for the overall community through the provision of excellent services and pursuit of our vision. That's the mission. You took on the Vacaville vision. You made some changes at your public workshop. This is another 20,000-foot explanation. This is more future-oriented, more forward-thinking. It's more aspirational. It's something you're always chasing. That's what's typical in a vision. City of Vacaville organization is entrusted with broad responsibilities that have a profound impact on our citizens' health, safety, convenience, and enjoyment. We carry out the organization's mission in a manner that promotes pride among our residents and a high quality of life they enjoy, and our city organization for the contributions they make on their behalf. We create this sense of pride by commitment to the following principles: excellence in innovation and customer service, open and inclusive decision-making processes, both internal to the organization and external. It's about sustaining an organizational culture that values diversity, individual contributions, accountability, teamwork, and a can-do attitude. It's also about promoting a community culture of diversity and inclusion, along with benefits of both a big and a small town environment, a safe environment. So that's the vision and mission. So then, and that's the 20,000-foot explanation. So now we're going to be a little bit more specific, and this is a 10,000-foot conversation. We're going to take the vision and mission and convert it into 4 goals. The first one is ensuring public safety. It's about meeting the needs and expectations of all residents and businesses and integrate health and public safety into the fabric of the Vacaville community. Goal number 2, strengthen the local economy. Our businesses will grow locally through public-private partnerships, create local job growth to support livable wages, and greater tax base. Not a greater tax base, that's not the end game, that's a means to an end, and it's about providing great services to Vacaville stakeholders. Protecting the Vacaville's excellent quality of life. We're promoting and protecting Vacaville's quality of life as viewed by a diverse population and their respective needs, recognizing that different populations have different expectations, different needs. And the 4th goal, maintaining effective and efficient services. Within established fiscal constraints of the city, we provide effective and efficient services using outcomes and data as measures of the goal and attainment of it. And then we also say in page 6 of the strategic plan it's titled, We Are Serious. We are serious. We're going to use metrics. We're going to use data to understand the goal itself and how and whether we're moving the needle on those goals as well. So the next conversation is the 5,000-foot conversation. There are strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats that affect your ability to accomplish those goals, your vision and mission. What are the SWOTs that you have the most concerns about? We have identified pages on pages of SWOTs with the help of your staff. And you identified 8 SWOTs that you felt really impact the future of your community. You converted those into initiatives. We're going to tackle those things. You're already tackling it to some degree, but you're being more formal about it. With regard to the goal of ensuring public safety, you're going to manage and discuss and have a workshop on the constantly changing paradigm shift for police services. Police services, public safety in general, is an important facet. I know your council knows this because you've invested heavily since the Great Recession in public safety. It permeates and impacts your other goals and your strategic initiatives. It's foundational. And every police department in this state, if not this country, is facing challenging new expectations of them, both as a result of state law changes, as a result of breakdown in some of our social service fabric, and there's a change in expectations on the part of many residents in a lot of communities. Homelessness, and that's related to mental health and the lack of services to folks that need mental health. And oftentimes that results in homelessness. And then related to mental health sometimes is substance abuse issues as well. your police are and more expected to be more like social workers than what they were in the past, police officers. There's a changing expectations in the huge amount of authority and power that police departments are given, and that use of force and when it's appropriate, and what people expect from your police officers. And then there's been some changes in state law, the prison realignment, where various crimes, the penalties associated with those crimes have been reduced. As a result, as you would think, the volume of lower level property crimes have increased. So police departments are in a state of shifting, new challenges. One of the first things you said was, we need to have a conversation about that. What's our strategy and how we're doing and how are we equipping our police department for those challenges? The second one is the fire department. You did a very forward-thinking standards of cover study that talks about the calls for service. Where are they now? How are you responding? And based on your general plan, where will be the growth of calls in the future? And the plan basically says you're going to need more staffing, another engine. And then if you're going to respond appropriately within time constraints, you're going to have to move this fire station. Hugely expensive proposition. Likely be done in phases. That needs to be done in consideration of all your other fiscal challenges. Major challenge, major investment potentially. So that was a strategic initiative. You wanted to have some discussions at the council level with staff. Next is strengthen the local economy and articulate a current economic development program. I'm impressed with the city, the success you've had thus far. You have so many great strengths that play into a strong economic development effort. You got obviously the biotechnology sector. You got UC Davis just up the street. You got Travis Air Force Base just down the street. You've invested and developed some business parks that are ready to rock and roll with business expansion. It's time to have a current, robust economic development plan that's articulated. Next is manage impacts from growth. This could easily be here or in the quality of life section. The reason why I left it here is having been exposed to a lot of communities that have had huge economic development growth, that have been very successful. If they're not managing the impacts associated with growth, you lose the community support for programs like that. In fact, sometimes some communities get so frustrated, they start producing ballot measures to put clamps on things, and that's not very functional as well. So managing the impacts of growth is an important part of a current, a robust economic development environment. You talked about development impact fees, but let's not rely just on that. Landscape lighting districts, CFDs, et cetera. You wanted to have a whole toolkit for that. Protecting the Vacaville's excellent quality of life. There's been a discussion about promoting housing for all categories of your residents, whether it be low, moderate income, even high income folks. They all should have options. Your apartments have a very low vacancy rate that puts pressure on rents. Very common in the community I live in. Senior citizens have needs as well, and you're asking for an assertive housing program for all, providing options for all. Goal number 4, maintain effective, efficient services. The first one is, ensure fiscal sustainability. And that's a strength of yours. You've been into long-range fiscal forecasting, and you have your eye on the long-term ball when you're making current decisions. What you're asking for in this document is on that forecast, you strike a balance between being too conservative and being too aggressive, too lenient on your assumptions. Looking at budget deficits, operating deficits, and being on top of that, managing that, having strategies for it. What is also in here, we had some discussion about Measure M. It's a great added tool that maybe it's time for a policy guiding Measure M going forward. It has a sunset date. You talked about different things about how we account for it and how we keep it separate, et cetera. That's part of your ensuring fiscal sustainability. Next is rebuild support services. That's one area that was radically cut during the Great Recession and has not recovered yet. And this was great. I see very few councils that understand the importance of support services and want to invest in it. So I think it's fantastic. It's information technology, finance, human resources, risk management. A lot of jurisdictions don't spend a lot of time on risk management. That's an area that's going through a huge transition. I don't think people realize. The insurance markets are hardening. There's concern the insurance markets are going to dry up for public agency. A lot of our clients are seeing a 20% increase in insurance premiums for excess insurance, 20% per year with higher deductibles. And there's a concern if things don't change pretty soon, some insurance companies will leave California. So you want to have a conversation about risk management, claims trends, et cetera, and learn how to keep the trend more acceptable level. And then the last strategic initiative, building a positive organizational culture and workforce. More and more professional associations are seeing the tie-in between culture and the performance of public agencies. And cultures have a huge impact on success of public agencies. What is culture? It's how we perform our jobs. It's how we interact with each other. It's how we interact with people outside the organization. It's the behaviors that the organization wants to see emulated, and there's behaviors that you want to see discouraged. Those pieces together describe the culture of your agency, and your council put it on here as something that we need to focus on. What's our culture now? And we want to define a positive culture going forward. I think that's forward thinking. Very few public agency governing boards make that a priority, so I'm absolutely impressed. So what are the next steps? Well, the next step would be eventual council adoption. You heard the city manager talk about March 24th. It's a possibility. But it's implementation. It's executing your dreams and your priorities. And this is what makes it transformational. And the city manager ought to present business plans for the strategic initiatives. This is the street level conversation. We went from 20,000 foot to 10 to 5. This is where the rubber hits the road. Developing specific strategies to address your initiatives. Talk about specific outcomes. How do we know when we've accomplished it? Develop timelines with milestones. Designate project managers and other staff members. Discuss resources. Do we have the resources to tackle that initiative? If not, how much more money do we need? And have a conversation about the risks inherent in taking on these initiatives. That's what the implementation will be after you adopt the plan. So the recommendation tonight, accept public comment, council questions and comments, consider adoption date, March 24th, and direct city manager to return with, on the 24th, a strategic plan for adoption and eventual business plans. I'm not suggesting the business plans will be there on the 24th, that would be part of your direction of the city manager on the 24th is to follow up with the execution plans or the business plans. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions or comments you have.
I just wanted to say thank you for engaging an outside consultant for the strategic plan. And I hope this pattern continues.
Thank you. I'll close public comments. Vice Mayor Beatty.
Yes, I extremely excited about this whole process. I don't have to have any questions, just want to sing your praises and everything you've been able to direct us in. I did not find our time tedious and stressful. I found it really exciting. I did get a chance to hear you speak in some other venues before the city contacted you about this process. And just the last point you made about culture, how to be, it's an important part of a direction that any staff goes or any organization goes. I think, you know, as you stated and is obvious if you watch the news, any major organization, Google has their own culture, Microsoft has their own culture, well-run organizations have a culture. So in fact, that's the topic I heard you speak on in another setting. Just so grateful we were able to get you to be involved in this process and really excited about the direction this sets us on. Again, just I'm gushing because I'm just so excited about the work you've done and the direction we're going. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I would like to echo his comments. It's been a long time since we've had a strategic plan and set our vision forward. So it was nice that we were able to get the council together, set aside a couple nights. We had a few people from the public. I wish we would have had more. However, I think we came up with a very realistic plan, a great vision for the city of Vacaville. And I think you said it earlier, you know, when we get 2 more council members sitting up here, we'll have direction from our staff, and we're all going to be heading in the same direction. So I appreciate all your hard work, everything that you put into it. You made it comfortable for all of us, you know, even in our interviews, making sure that you got the collective ideas from all of us. And I just appreciate everything. Councilmember Mashburn.
Really quickly, ditto on singing your praises, but I want to throw this out there for staff because they had to take a really deep dive to do the SWOT analysis and had to be very introspective about those areas that sometimes we're defensive over. You know, we get defensive over our different bureaus that we might be in charge of and do. I know I work at the county. I'm very particular about mine. And so it's hard sometimes to do that self-analysis, and our staff did a great job. They didn't bring us just the strengths. They brought us those areas where they see vulnerability. And the devil in this plan is in the details, as they say. And it's going to go back to staff now and to the city manager for them to implement this and to carry this vision forward. It's a great roadmap, but again, the devils are in the detail. And with what the staff brought at the beginning for us in order to develop the plan, I know that moving forward, what they're going to bring us to bring this plan to fruition is going to be just as good. And so I'm looking forward to that, and I'm very appreciative, and thank you all for the hard work you did. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to the staff as well. I mean, we had a strategic plan, we had a vision, we had a mission. It's been the same for many years, and making a few tweaks here and there will help everybody buy into it and move forward. Thanks for your help in that, and yeah, that's it.
And I think the recommendation would be just like our city manager said, bring it back on the 24th. I think we'd all agree on that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll move to item 9F, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 9F this evening is receive report on city efforts with homeless outreach and provide direction on additional efforts. So if you look at the staff report you received in 9F, you'll see a very quick summary of some of the current services we provided as part of our homeless outreach programs. So I won't dwell too much on that because you can see what those items are. I did want to note that in part of this process, we do have a community response unit that's out and dealing with the homeless community on a regular basis. They just completed in January another very thorough walkthrough, and I'm always impressed when I talk to the chief that our team is out there not only just counting heads, but they're actually engaging and trying to figure out what the issues are. I think, John, as the head of the Homeless Roundtable, often says every homeless solution is unique because every person's unique, and there's no silver bullet. If there was, we would have had that taken care of by now. But our new estimates show an estimated homeless of about 90 at the time of the count in January. The good news is, when we wrote the report, 5 of those had been sheltered, so some progress in between those times. But based upon those numbers and the discussion, what's become clear as in a path forward is the community response unit is saying that the acceptable homeless response that would really help at this point is a shelter of 6 to 8 beds that could provide the ability for them to find resources right away to get people into. So we were discussing along those lines of how many people will accept services at a given time. If you recall, we have 3 beds currently at Shelter Solano, and we have a few hotel rooms that we can use in emergency case. But they've identified this need of really a 6 to 8 bed unit that could offer that level of support. I think in our community discussions, it's become clear that, the community says that, that's a facility that has to have full services. So it'd be important to find a solution along those lines. So what I tried to present to you this evening is kind of a recommended step forward on where we go on these conversations. If you look at the recommendation, first and foremost, so much of this success of working with our homeless residents is addressing those needs they have. And from touching them at the crew level, we know that a great deal of that is either substance abuse related or mental health related or other related needs that are really served more at different levels in the city, especially some of those things are met at the county level. So the first recommendation was to request the creation of a 2x2 with City Council and Board of Supervisors that would allow us to put together an MOU of understanding of how we're each going to work together to meet the homeless residents' needs, and what that would look like in terms of operating some sort of operation of a shelter. The second was a request that city staff begin identifying potential locations that could house such a facility. We have begun that work in looking at what might be available in the community, so we're beginning that work now. Once that MOU is completed, though, it's going to be important to work forward as a community. I think one lesson learned over the past year is any solution we provide, we need to have a robust public conversation about it, about how it meets the needs, our community's needs, but also how it will meet the total community's needs to make sure that people are comfortable that if we put this facility somewhere in the community that it's going to be well operated, it's going to be safe, and it's going to be address those concerns they have up front. So I think it's important to really have a robust public engagement on the very front end of those conversations. And then also, one of the challenges in this type of relation is as homeless funds have been brought down over the last few years, they've been directed specifically to the county and to the continuum of care, the JPA in the county. So what that means is the actual amount of revenue that's made it down to the cities has been very limited. So we don't have resources specific to homeless services that are coming directly to the city from what you're hearing in the press of this money being freed up for services. So either partnering with the county or partnering with the JPA is going to be necessary, or finding other grant opportunities to help an item like this come to fruition. And so the recommendation this evening was really just wanted to bring this item before you to have an opportunity to get some direction from the council on kind of next steps forward related to helping our homeless residents and really get that feedback forward so that staff and I can begin doing that work forward with a clear direction on exactly where we're heading. So with that, I will.
Thank you very much. I see no council comments right now. I'll open it up to public comment.
Mayor, Council, Raleigh Galligan, I appreciate, the council addressing this issue, and I appreciate the staff report. It's cutting out still a little bit. My math shows, that increase 90 is about 33% from 2017. So that's disappointing. Mostly millennials and Gen Z. So it's discouraging from that point. Well, we lack shelter beds, and I think that's why our numbers are going up, and so that's why I appreciate you addressing this and with services around it. And I appreciate the amount of beds, because I agree, it's not like you can fill them all up at once. But when I talked to you this morning, we did fill the beds at Shelter Solano once I knew they were open. We worked with the crew and Sergeant Dahl, and we got one of our lifetime Vacavillians there with medical issues. So I appreciate knowing that. But, our homeless crisis isn't going away. You know that. until Prop 47 is dealt with, till the opioid crisis is addressed, until we get mental illness, a handle on it, we get some affordable housing, and until the Ninth Circuit impact ruling changes. It's just not going to go away. But I do want to correct one thing in the record, not so much about this, but it is about the tiny houses. It was on Facebook that nobody communicated to the owners of Cliffside Plaza, and I did. I talked to all of them. I went to them. I gave them all the literature. I had follow-up phone calls. I had emails. Everybody except the Western across, of the street on Mason. I talked to everybody quite a few times. So they all were given a heads up. Just one thing, if this is a sincere approach, and I hope it is, I'm wondering why there's no timeline on the project so that we have a target date that we want to get some resolution, once you do your MOUs and once you do the ad hoc committee. It would really be great to have a timeline so that we can maybe plan or not plan on having shelter beds before the next winter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I just wanted to come forward and volunteer to be on this ad hoc community. I'm very active in the homeless community. I know most of them. They trust me. I know a lot of even things that maybe the police won't get in their interactions. So I think that I can be very helpful on this committee. Thanks.
Thank you.
So thank you for trying to work with the homeless situation. But I'm just wondering, why is the county pushing for Vacaville to do more? You guys were doing great before this tough sheds came along. All of a sudden, now we're getting increases, and they're millennials, so they're not our bets. Like, we're encouraging this behavior. This is a county project. Rio Vista, Dixon, and Suisun don't have a shelter. We have a shelter. How come they're not pushing over there? Why does that money have to stay here? Think about it and follow the money, please.
Thank you. Any other comments, or I'm going to close public comment? Oh.
Mayor, council members, let me read you a quote. California is doing more than ever before to tackle the homeless crisis, but every level of government must step up and put real skin in the game. California is making historic investments now to help our communities fight homelessness. December 4th, 2019, Governor Newsom. And the reason I say that is he's pushing out nearly $500 million. Kern County, Riverside, San Bernardino have already received nearly $36 million. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired of fighting with you about this issue. I sat all evening listening to you concerned about a special election and money that would be spent on that. And if you look at your staff report, in the staff report on 3 different occasions, it talks about city would need to find funding for acquisition and ongoing operations. Under fiscal impact, this 8 to 10 bed facility, you said 6 to 8 to 10 bed facility may require significantly more city resources if funding is not identified. These funds would need to be prioritized against other essential city services. What you're talking about is cutting services for parks, recreation, maybe even some of your employee benefits. And what I don't understand is the county is ready to stand up the tiny home project. I've been working with the state of California. They made the park and ride available. We would use a small portion of it. And in your letter that you wrote, Mayor, before our meeting, in which this was duly noted that we're negotiating with the state, you put in there that the resolution will also state, the resolution tonight, will also state that the council will continue to be against any program that includes shed without utilities. Might I remind you, you refused to give us sewer and water. When we made application on Brown Street, you refused to give us sewer and water. So, okay, in all fairness, I'm recommending that we go ahead with a tiny home project on the park and ride. We're going to be purchasing ductless heating and cooling, so the tiny sheds will be heated and cooled. And, I would ask you to allow us to hook up to city sewer and water. When I presented to you about a year ago, I made a presentation that showed you that by using the 10 beds at that time, I think Councilmember Mashman talked about so many beds over in...
I need you to wrap up.
Okay, I'll wrap up. $1.8 million is what this could save the city of Vacaville if you would just consider a tiny shelter project.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last thing. There are no schools, there are no parks, and there are no children next to the park and ride. That was the reason that we couldn't
Okay,
put
thank
it
you.
anywhere else in your city.
Thank you.
Gayleen Robitel, and I'm glad Supervisor Thompson brought up a couple of points. And I think one of the biggest things is the city of Vacaville, our council and our residents should be determining what services we do as a city and what housing looks like in the city of Vacaville. That should be determined by us residents and our city. So I think that if Solano County wants to help, I think Solano County should be playing a supportive role to the city of Vacaville. So maybe Solano County can give you money to help you with this recommendation and to carry out something if we need money, if we do need shelters. I think it's a little bit odd that we're wanting to create a whole sheltering program and we're talking about 8 people, maybe 10 people. Even the navigator said, that most of them won't go into a sheltering program. I mean, we've had Shelter Solano available. They won't go in. So then you're going to create a whole sheltering program and have it maybe set there or else be empty and have people coming in from other areas into our city, making it worse. And so I don't think it's good, but I think Solano County maybe can better serve themselves and the residents of Vacaville by playing a supportive role to the city to help us instead of trying to shove a tiny shed project down our throat that the residents have already said they don't want. No one wants it. And Supervisor Thompson said about the water and the utilities. Well, those utilities were not going to go into the tiny sheds. They were going to go on a site possibly, but the tiny sheds were going to have no utilities, no electricity, no heat, no water, and they were going to have porta potties. So I don't know if I call porta potties really utilities. So again, I'm just going to say again, Solano County needs to support the city of Vacaville and not try to shove projects down our throat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amber Robitaille. I also want to reiterate that I don't think the county should be involved in anything going on with housing because it should be shaped by City of Vacaville. City of Vacaville should have in its town what we want to have. And it's been said by numerous parties, oh, Vacaville doesn't have a shelter. We have Opportunity House, which is actually around the corner from my house, where they also wanted to put tiny sheds, and Supervisor Thompson keeps calling them tiny homes, and the county keeps calling them tiny homes, but they don't have electricity, they don't have running water, no facilities at all. So we can't have something like that in Vacaville and call it good when we're housing maybe 10 people. And I've heard the comments being yelled at 10 people at a time. Well, right now we have 90, and building a shelter for maybe 8 or 9 people that are wanting to accept the help. Like, what do we do with that? And that shelter, is it going to be a wet shelter where people can still continue to use drugs and alcohol? Or are we going to have guidelines for that shelter as Opportunity House does? Because that's a lot of times why nobody wants help is they don't want to adhere to the rules. So I am comfortable with what City of Vacaville would try to do because I think you guys have the best interest. But we already see that Solano County does not have the best interest for what goes on in Vacaville because they've tried to shove a project nobody wanted on Brown Street. And then they underhanded tried to shove a project on Leisuretowne Road. That, again, when everybody found out that it was actually they were wanting to put it there, nobody wanted it. And then 5 days ago, the county is caught at the Park and Ride investigating that area to see if they're wanting, what they're wanting would actually be able to go there. So again, 5 days ago, they were caught out there not telling the public again what they're wanting. The only time they addressed it was on a closed session item. So no, the public didn't know, again, what the business was of them purchasing the Park and Ride to put that out there. So, you know, I don't think that the city of Vacaville is trying its best now to be as transparent as possible, but the county is still being sneaky. So I wouldn't be putting my eggs in that basket. I'd be doing what the city of Vacaville wants. And I think you guys are doing a great job with crew and the homeless outreach. I just think that there needs to be more funding for the programs we already have. Thank you.
I'm going to close public comment.
Good evening, Council. My name is Gail Thompson, and I need to correct some statements that were made tonight. First of all, the people, the residents of Vacaville, do not approve the housing projects in Vacaville. This body does, not the residents. That's why you're there. Second of all, the ad hoc committee that was presented to this council was 18 months ago. No action has been taken, and to my knowledge, 6 calls, not 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, but 6 calls were made to this body to get the formation of that ad hoc committee that Councilman Mashburn suggested went unanswered, and 18 months later, that ad hoc committee is no further, which is why Pastor Galligan asked if there's a time frame on this, because the can keeps getting kicked down the road. Shame on all of you that we've had people that have been sleeping under bridges and in the elements because these bodies can't get their act together. Secondly, why do we have to have a homeless project in Vacaville? Why not Dixon or Rio Vista or Fairfield? Because Vacaville has their own homeless. These are homegrown residents, and the young ones that Pastor Galligan was talking about are Will C. Wood and Vaca High graduates, born and raised here. They're not imported from other communities. They are our neighbors. No support for this project. Again, if the tongues were notarized, don't believe them. You were presented a letter with over 12 clergy signatures. Those clergymen represent tens of thousands of citizens. They're what's known as the silent majority. They don't flood your council members every meeting and take up your time to tell you that they support this. I know of one night alone, you had 23 of those silent majorities sitting in this chamber who didn't say a word. So the community does support it, which is why when a call goes out for sleeping bags, within 24 hours, 31 of them were dropped at my door. When a call goes out that we need food, that call is answered immediately. When a call goes out that we need medical attention, we have physicians going underneath the bridge treating your citizens. So there is a lot of community support there. And if you continue to bury your head in the sands, you're going to lose state and federal funding. The homeless are not going away, and you can't keep shipping them to Fairfield. You run out of beds. Are there more than 10 that would take services? Absolutely. I guarantee it. But 10 is the limit that this board has in their mind. So on that, I want to thank you. And remember, the people do support this project.
Mayor and Council, my name is Roy Stockton. I'm glad that we have 12 pastors that are willing to help the homeless. I think this is the perfect project to be handled privately. I think every life does matter, and we should try to help those people. But in looking at the expenses associated with helping the homeless and the numbers that were updated today that were even higher than last time, the 90 to 100 homeless that were documented make up approximately 0.1% of our population. 0.1%. And of the ones that want help is 0.01% of the population. And when we're talking about fiscal responsibility for the city, I think that this is an endeavor that Vacaville citizens will get behind to help privately, because I think that regardless if they're that small of a percentage, the people in Vacaville love this community and the people that decide to live here, and we'll step up to rise up to that challenge. But I don't think that you or the county, given those statistics, are the right place to pound your fist and make those demands. 12 pastors with all those congregations, there's a lot of people that can come together and actually do something positive to help. It isn't going to be a burden on the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I'm going to close public comments. Council Member Harris.
Well, given this staff report, it's pretty obvious that we've dispelled the myth that Vacaville has no skin in the game, because we do. We've done quite a bit. I, for one, am, proud of the work that our police force has done. I'm proud of the work our homeless roundtable has done. I want to, thank Pastor Galgan. I want to thank Skip and Gail for all the work that they have done to help the homeless in our community. When I take a look at the number that would actually want help and seek help, it is a very small percentage. And, Roy Stockton made some good comments about, a very caring community and people who would step up and help and are stepping up to help. I would say really, I'm sort of tired of the back and forth as well, and would like to have some solution that is both city and county, coming together. So I'm in favor of the creation of the 2x2 working group. I'm not confident that we need a timeline on it, because number one, it's probably going to take a while to identify the 2x2 and then actually come up with a working MOU. I really am hesitant to sort of direct what that 2x2 would offer up as solutions. I think that's something that actually needs to be worked out when they come together, as opposed to saying, I want you to work on this project or this particular aspect of homelessness. It needs to be the 2x2 literally coming together and figuring out what's best. So I would support the creation of the 2x2. I would support the creation of the MOU. I would support, looking for grants and other funding opportunities. But I would not give a direction on what that group should do. I would prefer that come back to us for decision making.
Councilmember Mashburn.
So many times tonight I heard the term "the county" or "your city" from our public. And I'd just like to take a second to remind everybody that 2 of the districts in the county are in our city, and remind the county that this city is your city. And we are all part of one big community. And we will not find a solution to this problem through division. So we all do need to work together. And this 2x2 committee is a very good start to that. As was pointed out earlier, a year ago, we asked for this committee to be. The staff report points out that, and was pointed out by members of the community and the supervisor, that there's an incredible amount of money that's going to be channeled into the state of California, but the county is going to be the vector. Without an MOU with the county, the city's ability to access that is almost nil. The county has MOUs with other cities, like the city of Vallejo, where they just acquired a $6.5 million homeless program and shelter in a partnership with the county. The county is willing to put money into the city of Fairfield where they have an MOU. The county has yet to really come to the city and say, we want to make an investment in your city. They have a program that they want to bring forward, which is their Tiny Sheds program, absolutely. But an actual large investment in the city would be significant and would really help, given the city's financial position and the county's ability to access those funds. So I think that, again, this 2x2 is a good start, and I would actively encourage staff to reach out to the county and make sure that we move forward with that and that is a top priority. And then I also would like to ask staff from a city perspective to look, and just because he's not here, but I know he would bring this up and I know that it matters to him. Councilman Sullivan is interested in a program that would put some of the homeless in our community to work if they chose to do so on some projects on our streets. And so I would also like to ask the staff at least give that program a look and bring the information back to the council. We're not really in a great financial position, but if there's any way we can look at his program that he is a proponent of, I'd like to at least hear about it, see a presentation on it, if that's possible. So that's where I stand on it. Thank you.
So I would also obviously want the 2x2. My question to city attorney is, can we make a recommendation that I can appoint 2 people to this committee so that we can then get a hold of the county and have them, because they're going to have to say, yes, we want to be a part of that. It's going to be a little bit of a process, but if we can do that tonight, then we can move forward. Is that what you would think would be appropriate?
Yes, I think you could appoint 2 people tonight.
Okay. I also agree with Councilmember Harris that we should obviously look for grants and other funding opportunities. And I think that we've done a very poor job in engaging the public. And I think that's going to be one of the first and foremost things that we do after we get this MOU together, is to start these town hall meetings, start talking to the public, make sure they're involved because they feel like it's been shoved down their throat on multiple locations. And I think we should do a better job making sure they are informed. So that would be my recommendation. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Recommend putting together the 2x2 working group with the county, 2 council members and 2 county supervisors.
Second. Are you going to include all 4 items or just that item?
No.
Just start there.
I want to start there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a motion and a second. And all I would ask is, would it be okay if I made the appointment, or do you want to bring it back to another meeting where we all discuss? I'm okay with it. Do you want to make that amendment to your motion then? To have me appoint?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You want a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we will move on to item 10, reports of city manager.
No reports this evening, Mayor.
I would like, Jeremy, for you to bring back at the next meeting, maybe just an updated budget. I know that we were going to talk about making sure that we continuously do that. Just bring it back to nothing too heavy, just kind of where we are. And okay, thank you. Reports of city council. I'll start. Tonight we have appointments to both the Planning Commission and the Parks and Recreation Committee. I did want to thank all those who applied. I was very impressed with the amount of people that applied for the Parks and Recreation. I really wish more people would have applied for the Planning Commission. However, with that being said, For the Parks and Recreation, I'm going to be replacing Christina Palmer and Paul Cheng, and Pamela Greaves. And I will be appointing Mary Vasquez, Keith Thompson, and Jennifer Leonard. And then for the Planning Commission, I will be replacing Joe Nicolai. And then I will be reappointing Jan Aldridge, reappointing Doug Beaumont, and then appointing Ralph Lightfoot. If I can get that, I'll make the motion. Take a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And I would just like to wrap up and maybe direct the city clerk. I would like to bring these folks back that are now not on the commissions. One of them, I believe, was 20 years on the,
Joe.
Yeah.
I served with him on the planning commission 10 years.
And I believe another one was like 18 or 19 years, just a lot of time, you know, devoted to the city. And yeah, Pamela Greaves. But I would like to invite them all back and do a special presentation for them. So if we can get that back on the next meeting, I would appreciate that. And with that, do I have anybody else from the council who wants to say anything? Okay, we'll move to item 12A, payment of claims. If I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And then closed session, we have none. So good night, Vacaville.